Ladies and gentlemen, whether you're a fan of chess and you follow the chess world every single day, or once a year you check in with us because we've got some crazy drama and breaking international news, it's always a good time. And right now, in June of 2025, we are living through a very viral moment. Gukesh, the world champion of chess, defeated Magnus Carlsen in a classical game, which ended with Magnus slamming the table, big exit, and it's made international news. Like, it was covered by massive publications. It was covered by all these massive, also social media platforms that cover, like Barstool Sports covered it. A bunch of other pages covered it. It was a really, really big deal. And on the very next day, we get even more. We get Hikaru doing an interview saying that was maybe the last classical chess game he's ever going to play against Magnus Carlsen. We get another unbelievable game from Gukesh, the world champion. And we're going to talk about it in this video. That's what we're going to do. And if you, for some reason, just got into chess, well, welcome. And hopefully you stick around. That Magnus Gukesh clip went so viral. It's being dissected all over social media. People are saying it was an arrogant reaction, this and that. I mean, I'm not going to participate in these debates because, frankly, I don't care. But today, Magnus is playing Hikaru. The very first game after that defeat, he shows up and he has to play against Hikaru. Here we go. Magnus opens up with e4. All right. And Hikaru plays e5. Keep in mind, in Norway chess, the format is if the players make a draw, they have to play what's called an Armageddon game. Magnus plays knight f3. Knight c6 is the move chosen by Hikaru. And on the third move of the game, we have what is considered at the highest level of chess a draw offer. When people play the 4 knights at the high level, it's a draw offer. It's a draw offer. You're basically saying, I have no interest in playing a long, deep game. Notice, nobody in this tournament has played a 4 knights. Most people on this move play the Italian or the Spanish if you want to push for an advantage. The Scotch is not so great, and if anybody watching this plays the Ponziani or other openings, at the high level, they just aren't seen. Knight c3, knight f6, bishop b5, bishop b4, castles, castles. Complete and total symmetry. When I saw this, I actually couldn't believe it, because Magnus Carlsen, throughout his career, has been known to be a monster when he loses. He's always going to make some sort of comeback. When I saw this, I was like, oh, he is trying to not play a game. He wants to kill the game against Hikaru and beat him in an Armageddon, which is what he wants to do. So we have takes. Takes on c6, knight takes c5. But black is going to do the exact same thing to white. Black is going to go rook e8 attacking the knight. And by the way, you'll notice Hikaru's down 17 minutes on the clock. That's because he cannot relax just yet. Hikaru doesn't necessarily know that Magnus is going to show up and do this. So knight d3 takes, but now this is the end, right? Complete symmetry of pawns, doubled c-pawns, and e and d gone. Only difference is the opposite colored bishops. Rook e1, knight d6. Rook e1 like this. Both guys trade some pieces. King f2. g5, bishop here. Hikaru plays rook d8. Magnus goes here, check here. And the official rule of this tournament is you cannot offer a draw to your opponent before 30 moves. They only made 18 moves, but they started repeating the position. A repetition is possible. If you repeat an exact position 3 times in chess, it's a draw. And that's what happens. I couldn't believe this. I was like, oh my God, Magnus didn't want to play. And sure enough, he gave an interview before and after and said, I still haven't recovered. Not only did he say, I still haven't recovered, he also said things along the lines of, at least in the past, when I played classical chess, long, grinding, 4, 5, 6 hour games, even if I lost, I'm enjoying the process of playing. But he's not even enjoying that anymore. And listen, he had to ask himself the same thing I've asked myself, by the way, in my road to Grandmaster, is like, do I really like this? This is pain and suffering. And unless you win, I'm not sure you're particularly happy. So he alluded to having those emotions. Meanwhile, Hikaru, after this game, you know what Hikaru did? Hikaru gave an interview. He said, it's unfortunate that that game ended that way, because that very well could be the last time Magnus and I play each other in classical chess, which is serious chess. They might play title 2. You never know. You can't really control who you get paired against on chess.com. That might have been the last game. Did they ever play against each other in their careers? They've been playing for, almost 20 years. He said, it very well could have been. Then he also said like 20%. And, Hikaru's an interesting interview because he really says what he thinks. But I don't know if they're ever going to play classical chess again. Maybe Norway Chess 2026, but I have absolutely no idea. Now, in the meantime, they actually have to play another game. And Magnus said that he had only really prepared for the Armageddon. D4, D5, C4, C6. Keep in mind, Hikaru starts with 3 minutes less than Magnus, but he gets draw odds. So if the game ends at a draw, he wins. Knight f3, knight f6, knight c3. Hikaru plays the open Slav, and Magnus plays the move g3. So Magnus plays an open Slav where he puts the bishop on the g2 square. Now, I've played this actually with white, but I've played it like an idiot, and I've lost some games. So I'm very, when I saw this, I was very curious. So Hikaru plays b5, which is the move holding together the queen side. Black takes a pawn and builds up this massive formation. Meanwhile, white is going to get the center and this diagonal. Bishop g2, Hikaru plays e6, rock solid. Magnus castles and plays knight e5. And right now, there is the threat of this, right? So black has a couple of moves here, like pawn to a6, as well as queen to b6. Both of these things defend against knight takes b5 and bishop b7. Hikaru, however, invented something at the board and played queen c8 after 30 seconds of thought. I actually think Hikaru did this because he didn't want to give away his real opening preparation, potentially, which he was maybe saving for future classical games. So he plays queen c8, which is not terrible, but it's not the best move. And now we have b3. This is one of these modern computer ideas where white just basically activates their pieces and just doesn't mind being a pawn down because you have a lot of activity. And after you make that trade, you're going to play things like a4, bishop a3, put the rooks over here, and every piece is going to get active. Hikaru now plays in a way that normally is good, but right now is not. And it's because he's unable to play the move pawn to a5 because there is a fork. And if you cannot play the move pawn to a5 because of this fork, black's position is going to be very difficult. Why is it going to be very difficult? I mean, it looks like black is just holding everything together. This pawn is 2 squares away from queening. In an endgame, you might accidentally sneak that pawn through, right? Now black can also play a5. Here's the problem. It looks like everything in the position is beautifully held together. It's not. It's not. Knight takes c3 is a nasty move. That pawn can just be captured. The point is that if you take it, I play the move knight c4, and you cannot prevent knight d6. It's unbelievable. You have all of these pieces standing around, and nobody can prevent it. If you go here and just take, and knight d6 is still happening. So you're going to lose all your pieces. So seeing as though he cannot do that, Hikaru castled. But the problem is that now, Magnus has all the benefits of his position, and he's no longer a pawn down. Keep in mind, in the beginning of the game, black took a pawn. But as we go into the game, black is no longer up a pawn. White still has pressure. This pawn is weak. The C file is going to be weak. You're going to get your queen over here and your other rook, and this is just going to be a typical Magnus performing surgery type of game. Bishop to a6, queen targets the pawn on b4, and the rook is ready to slide out of the way. The bishop goes to b5, targeting the knight on a4. Can one of the best defensive players in the world, if not on his best day, the best defensive player in the world, aka Hikaru, defend against the incoming assault of Magnus? Look at this. e3, rook on c1, queen on d2, everybody moving together, everybody putting pressure. Queen to a8. Magnus is now up a pawn, and he's up 1.5 minutes against Hikaru. But this is why the battle between Magnus and Hikaru is so epic. Because Hikaru is about to conjure up some absolutely wicked nonsense. Magnus gives up the bishop for the knight, so the knight cannot create any counterplay. Looks like he's just moments away from breaking through the position. But he makes one inaccuracy. And with just enough time, Hikaru lashes out on the opposite side of the board. You can imagine a future where the queen and the pawn give a mate, but the queen would have to see through 2 different pawns. It does not have X-ray vision to that extent. Magnus plays h4. Hikaru now, this is the only thing he's going to do. He's going to try to conjure up something on this side of the board. Magnus is better, but he has to organize his pieces in some way. And after takes and takes, the queen is coming into g4. Before the queen even comes in, Hikaru plays g5, using the only remaining resources that he has to shred open the white position. White has 2 minutes, 39 seconds. Hikaru has 1:55. h5, g5 is absolutely insane. To play like this, just nuts. Completely nuts. Magnus has to take. Hikaru continues the attack. There's no way for white to use any of these pieces in a defensive way. They served their purpose. They broke through the queen side. He won his pawn. How is Magnus going to defend? The most principled way to meet an attack on the edge of the board. I repeat, stop what you're doing. Put down whatever you're doing. The best way to meet an attack on the edge of the board in chess is to strike back in the center. Strike back in the center. Give up a pawn, but now the rook and the queen will be able to transfer over much faster. Right? The center is now open. Knight e4, knight f6 is easy counterplay for white. Hikaru rushes in with queen g4. The computer is evaluating the position as equal. It was just +2. Magnus plays queen e3. Hikaru takes on g3. White doesn't have much of an advantage anymore. Here comes king g7. Oh my goodness! It's actually Hikaru who is about to checkmate Magnus in the Armageddon game. King g2. Hikaru plays rook h8, the most natural move that he could have played. But it's the wrong move. At this point, Hikaru needed to chill out and play queen f3 check. He had this monstrous counterattack planned. He needs to play queen f3 check, trade the queens, put the bishop on the e2 square, and just lock it all down. But he's still going for counterplay. And he goes all in for counterplay. But Magnus's king goes forward. And you take a moment, you look and you go, wait, I don't have anything. How is that possible? Bishop f1, this is a threat. This is a threat. But he just goes here. The king emerges from g2. There are no more checks. And only one guy is about to start attacking the other. Queen h2, queen e5, the king goes to the back rank. Magnus takes the bishop. Why did Hikaru have to give the bishop away? He doesn't have another easy move. If he goes here, Magnus would have given a check and brought his knight in, and there's again nothing. And out of nowhere, despite launching a vicious bit of counterplay, Hikaru loses because after queen f2, the king safely snuggles up to the 2 pawns, escapes. What a game. What a counterattack from Hikaru. h5, g5, shredding open the white position. But he needed to halt his momentum at the right moment, and he didn't do it. And Magnus wins the Armageddon. We still get a banger of a game, and I have 2 more banger games to show you, by the way. All right? Hold on to your hat. Crazy that might have been the last game of classical chess that we've ever seen between Hikaru and Magnus. Maybe they're going to play rapid. Maybe they're going to play blitz. I don't know. But you heard it from the horse's mouth. I think that's the saying, unless I just called Hikaru a horse. Next game I have for you is the All-India matchup. Arjun Erigaisi defeated Gukesh in the earlier rounds of the tournament. Gukesh started this tournament with a loss to Magnus and a loss to Erigaisi. Now, you talk about the world champ, right? And now he's come all the way back in the span of a week, beating Magnus in classical chess. All the headlines internationally are about him commending his humility, his attitude, his compassion, his mental, like everything. Really, really epic stuff. And now he has to play Erigaisi after defeating Magnus. And let me tell you something right now. It could not have gone any worse. You are looking to build momentum after getting your first win in classical chess against Magnus Carlsen. He opens with e4. Arjun Erigaisi, by the way, absolute lunatic. I love the way this dude plays chess. He plays the Peertz defense. The last time the Peertz defense was played in a classical chess game between 2 people whose ratings are 2780 was 1999. It's been 30 years. 2780. Nobody in the top 10 plays the Peertz defense. Not only does Erigaisi plays the Peertz defense, it gets Gukesh so rattled that from within the first 10 moves, Erigaisi is convincingly better with the black pieces. And Gukesh is down half an hour. Like I said, he could not possibly have started out in a more disastrous way. He couldn't have scripted it. You just beat Magnus. You're going to walk in. You're going to get a revenge on Erigaisi. It couldn't have started any worse. But watch as Gukesh doesn't falter, doesn't waver. This man shows up and is like, you know what? I'm in a worse position. You know what? You're swarming me with your bishop and your other bishop and e5 and rook e8 and rook d8 and rook f8. No problem. We're going to play chess. I'm going to defend my knight. And Erigaisi takes away the h6 square. Gukesh plays c3. It's all he's got. Down 30 minutes on the clock throughout this game. d3. Maybe not the best move. But Armageddon is bringing in the bishop. He's bringing in the rook. He's going to lock these pawns up. I have absolutely no idea how white is going to move around in this game. But the time is evened out. Gukesh plays bishop d2. Here comes e5. Plays knight back to e1 and e4. Gukesh's position is locked in a box. And Armageddon is hiding the keys. Watch this. f3. He begins the breaking out process. Black has to play queen c5 here. And the computer is just saying, lose the pawn and go here. That's not human. That's very tough. Instead, Armageddon plays the human move, right? Gukesh brings the knight back. Now the bishop drops back. Then Gukesh plays knight e4. Here comes the counterplay. Knight e5, we're going to trade the knights. No problem. Queen e1. White is worse, but white is not losing. So how are you going to beat Gukesh in this position? I'm not even sure. Rook f8. Apparently doubling the rooks on an open file is now a bad move. Knight g3. Here maybe you got to go rook f2. Not rook f1. Rook f2. Right? Rook f2, but then the knight would come back. So he goes here. Rook e6, bishop d2, rook g6 check, king h7, and queen e6. And Gukesh has come all the way back. Not only has he come all the way back, count the pawns. Black is 4, white is 5. Gukesh is better. Practically speaking, Gukesh is better. The evaluation bar, yes, Stockfish finds a way that it's not better, but they both have 7 minutes. The last time they got into a time scramble in the earlier rounds of the tournament, Armageddon swindled Gukesh a little bit. He kind of, he put pressure throughout the time scramble. Rook d1, rook to d7 protects. Here comes Gukesh. No way. He's not gonna win this game, right? King h1, knight back, knight to f3, and he's just going for the pawn. Now we're gonna see some mistakes here in the time scramble, of course. But that's to be expected. Knight to c4, rook f1 check. The king is getting hunted. Are they going to repeat moves and make a draw? Absolutely not. You're playing Gukesh. Of course he's not going to make a draw. He trades the rooks and knights, and he picks up a pawn. Oh my goodness. But here comes counterplay from Armageddon, hitting every single pawn on the second rank. a4. Gukesh is trying to kick the pawns out. Rook d2 attacks. Rook f3 defense. Now he starts pushing these pawns. Armageddon's 2 pawns down. White has 5, black has only 3. ba. King h3. It's over. It's over. Gukesh is just winning. But there's not a lot of time on the clock. Knight g4. He's going for the pawns. What Gukesh has to do is coordinate both those pawns together. He goes for the pawns. He pushes that one to save it. Rook b5. Takes. Bishop a5. Rook c4. Now this is the endgame. It's these two versus this one. White is going to have to sacrifice a little bit of material to promote one of his pawns and make sure black doesn't promote his. Rook b1. Gukesh less than 30 seconds on the clock. Armageddon also only playing on bonus time. He has a little bit more time, but it doesn't really matter. Gukesh running the king around the board. Check. Check. He pushes a pawn. He's 3 squares away from queening. Armageddon giving a lot of spite checks and trying to play defense, but Gukesh seals the deal. Gives a check. Black is now forced to make a trade. Take. Black will run the pawn. White will defend against the pawn. These pawns will go. We go into the 90th move. And Arjun Armageddon resigns on the 92nd move of the game because his pawn can now no longer cross. This pawn is going up the board. Gukesh fought all the way back. It could not have started any worse. It could... If you had asked him if this would be the opening position, he'd be like, what are you, out of your mind? Of course not. And this man, again, is the most tenacious middle game player, I think, on the circuit right now. Hikaru's tricky, and he's one of the best defenders, especially in those scrambles. Nobody plays middle games from a position of adversity like Gukesh. This man is on another, level. He just beat Arjun Armageddon. He just got revenge in classical against both guys who beat him in the beginning of the tournament. Magnus and Armageddon. Gukesh is now, in the running for winning the entire tournament. After having 0 points in the first 2 rounds. After the first 2 rounds, me and Gukesh had the same score. And I'm sitting here. Crazy. Unfathomable. I have more games. These recaps are a lot of fun. Fabiano Caruana, by the way, has had an amazing tournament as well. He's been low-key beating everybody. Knight f3. I think Hikaru, by the way, if I'm not mistaken, has lost 5 games in a row. Either in classical or Armageddon. By the way, I'm just realizing I saw that somewhere, and today he lost again, which is kind of insane. So Fabiano Caruana shows up to this game against Wei Yi and plays one of the most ridiculous openings I've ever seen in my life. So he plays the King's Indian attack, which is fine. Fabi here plays bishop e3. Let me tell you something right now. If one of you played bishop e3 and you were my student, you would no longer be my student. I would fire you. Normally, you fire the coach. I would fire you as a student. What the heck is this? He's baiting Wei Yi into playing d4 and then doing this. And he's basically saying, well, you can't go back. And now you blocked your own bishop, and I got access to some light squares in the center. And that's what happened. He plays c3 and queen a4. He's down 25 minutes on time in the opening, but it's a game. He gets a game, and that's what's the most important thing. We just saw what happened between Magnus and Hikaru when a player doesn't want to get a game, right? Queen a4, knight c6. He trades the knight, and it's very clear white is gonna, right, put pressure. Take, take. Bishop d2 back. Wei Yi is so good, man. c4 is an amazing move. Hanging pawn, but everything in black's position is pointing at collapsing on the white queen side. Takes on c4, the knight drops back, and now activates, and I mean, Wei Yi is just playing a fantastic defensive, but also counter-attacking style game. Pawn takes d4. Wei Yi grabs like this, and takes the pawn. I don't know how Fabiano's going to get out of this. He plays the move b3. Black just has one weak pawn on c6, but overall the position is absolutely fantastic. Rook d1, bishop c6 takes, and Wei Yi's like, you could have the pawn, Fabi. I don't care. I'm not interested. But Fabi does a nice job here of just saying, well, you gave me a pawn. I understand your goal is going to be create counterplay on the queen side, kill off that side of the board, and so on. But how are you actually going to do that? Because if you end up in a knight and pawn endgame, by the way, like Gukesh, deeper into that endgame, it was a knight versus bishop endgame with an extra pawn. It's going to be a knight versus bishop endgame with an extra pawn. How are you actually going to save this way, right? Like, what are you going to do? Look at this. Now, if you play rook takes b3, I probably drop back, pin you. I also have ideas like rook e7 and bishop d5, so we'll see what we like. But yeah, the question stands. How are you going to, like, what's the, it's not bishop versus knight anymore, but how are you going to defend? Well, he plays rook d8. We have takes. Rook c1, bishop a5. I mean, okay, you can play this endgame, and you can argue that it's a draw. But the second that white starts pushing that pawn, it's going to get really unpleasant. The second that white starts pushing that pawn, it's going to get really unpleasant. It's going to get unpleasant, I'm telling you. King is coming in, h3. Suddenly, without even having to push this pawn. Why? Because black has defended that so heavily. The white king has walked out over here, and how are you going to defend over here? Wei Yi goes here, but now white just marches in. Here's the problem. Because Wei Yi kept his rook on such a passive square, this is a very passive square, the rook has no scope anywhere else. It's stuck behind these pawns. Wei Yi just thought, I prevent this pawn from moving, like Levy's saying in his recap. I don't know how he saw the future. And Fabiano's not going to make progress, but he is making progress. He's making a lot of progress. Why is he making progress? While black stayed so passively on those squares, his pawns got really weak. And Fabi now has multiple targets. He has this, and the pawns can still go. Black goes e5, e4, bishop d5, and a pawn is going to... I told you, the second that pawn starts going, it's bad news, because now that pawn snuck 2 squares forward. Black's time to defend it is running out. He gets a pawn, but after b6, rook b8 check, and b7. How did that happen? Fabiano somehow snuck the pawn up to the worst square imaginable for black, who now has to play defense, but it's too late. It's too late. The rook can't even get back in time. Rook f3, b8. Wei Yi resigns. Fabiano Caruana has won 3 games in classical. He lost to Hikaru, but he has 3 wins in classical chess. That's massive. He's having an amazing tournament. He is now back up to number 3 in the world by over 10, by 10 points. It's Magnus, it's Hikaru, and it's Fabiano Caruana. And then it's the 2 Indians who are very, very close together. It's Erigaisi and Gukesh. I think it's Gukesh now because he just beat Erigaisi. But epic stuff. We're going to take a look at the standings in a second. Now, for the first time in a while, we also had a lot of decisive games in the women's side of things. Actually, I'm stuttering because the result of this game I actually thought was backwards. When I first saw it, I'm realizing I was wrong. Now, this one started out, this is Leiting Jie and Vaishali. This one starts out with Italian on both sides. Knight c3, a little bit of a rare move, because the knight is trying to go there and you're trying to grab the bishop. This has been seen in different Vienna positions. Notice how Lei is just delaying the capture of the bishop until now. And it's clear that Vaishali is going to try to go for a mate, which I have to tell you, this looks really nice. That's why white goes g3 to acknowledge the threat, gets out of the way completely, And now Vaishali kind of continues attacking. White trades. Now there's no mate. And so from here, you got to wonder, like, what's the plan? How are we going to get, rook f7? White's going to start moving some pawns. Takes, right? White's going to try to make some pawn breaks in the position. Otherwise, black is rock solid. You're not going to do anything until you trade some pawns. We have knight f6, rook e1, rook e2, rook c2. And this setup that Vaishali chooses is apparently the wrong one, because the moment that c5 arrives, black is uncoordinated. This is not what black should have done. I think black should have kept the knight on f6, but instead the position is going to land in a way where everything in black's position is a little bit strained, and Lei just puts on the pressure. c7, e6, e5, all under pressure. The rook and the knight have to kind of stand around defending each other. And then on top of that, white has the worst possible pawn for black to defend. There are still some chances to defend it. The game does actually get back to equality. But here, Vaishali needed to play the move c5. And with a minute on the clock, it's very tough to do that. She moves the knight to c1. And bishop b2 is a killer, because you don't need to save your rook. If you trade rooks, you are easily winning. The pawn is going to advance. It's going to get to a7, just like Fabiano's pawn. And Lei wins a very nice positional game. Very nice positional game. Picks up a lot of pawns. Knight hangs. Rook b7 is there. White played at like 96% accuracy. She played a very, very nice game. When I first saw this, I thought Vaishali played with white. That was the first. And I was like, wow, that was a really nice game. And I'm sitting here and going, oh, whoops. Ju and Jun, Sarah Kadam. This is the 5-time world champ versus the women's world rank, like 24, 25. Can we see the level shown, right? Sarah Kadam has had a great tournament. She's won a lot of games in both in Armageddon, but also a huge win in the Classical. We have in English, we have already. This is something that has been tried many, many times. This is like one of these reverse Benoni's, neo-Catalan, if you will. White trades the bishop, plays knight bd2. White has ideas like a3, b4, putting something on the e4 square and trying to push through with c5. Let's see the let's see the 5-time world champ go to work. There's the knight to e5. All right. I've never seen this approach before, but still, ideas like b4, c5, knight e4, etc. Let's see. Bishop to e7. Now the rook in many positions goes to b5, but it's not even possible here. This is a totally different way of playing the position. Granted, it's minus 0.4. Granted, the computer's like, not convinced, right? I actually played this line a lot with white myself, like bishop g5. I never have good results. I never know what I do terribly in these positions. I clearly don't understand them. But in this game, white kind of had continued pressure, but black played great. Sarah Kadam was up 30 minutes on the clock against the world champ with excellent pressure, but then began the counterplay. And this is the scariest part of the game. Bishop g5. The bishop is coming to the e3 square to shut down the white position. She takes on d7, and before black is able to create a big blockade, the threats continue. The bishop goes to e3, rook e5. Ju and Jun looking for an opportunity. Her opportunity might just be getting her opponent lower on the clock, but her opponent has a massive time advantage. But the time advantage is dwindling. Rook b8, queen a4, rook b2, still totally equal. 6 minutes to 10. Queen a8 check, king h7. There's mate all over the place. That's a great move, rook b8. If it takes, queen d5 is obviously checkmate, so queen c6, queen e7. Oh my goodness, 3 minutes. And now this move a4 is like a big wake-up call for black, because not so easy to play. He plays queen b4, and suddenly we may have, like a mix of different attacking ideas on the black king. Queen c3. She's trying, look at these last few moves. Queen b4, queen c3. She's looking for something, but it's actually white who arrives first in the counterattack and is ready to trade into the same type of endgame where Fabi beat Wei Yi. Opposite colored bishops with passed pawns. And this is just about the worst type of position to defend. You are going to be 2 pawns down. And she shows why she's got the nerve. She's got the tenacity. She has the stamina to play these long games. Ju and Jun getting it done. It wasn't easy by any stretch of the imagination. It took well over 70 moves. But she gets it done. It was a very, very complicated game, which wasn't clear at all, even 30, 40 moves in. But she had the stamina. I think she persevered into that later stage of the game. And the last game that I will show you is Armageddon between Hampi Konaru and Anna Musachuk, who drew their classical game. This one was an anti-Grunfeld variation. This has been played 1.5 million times. These computers love these lines. But from this game, from this point forward, it was just Anna Muzychuk having a great position. She had a great time. She played e5, she played bishop h6, and Humpy never got going. Black got here, and that was it. I mean, there was no way. The black bishop pinning the knight, preventing a lot of progress. Then you trade, and you're just not going to win this game. Muzychuk with a very convincing, very solid result. One pawn is going to queen. These pawns are going to try as well, but there are no winning chances here at all for white. I mean, maybe like on an alien level. Rook f6, rook b6, and this is a draw. I mean, the pawn and the king will go together, and this is just a draw. Very clinical. The women's results are kind of all over the place. So we have at the bottom Sarah Kadam, who has 6. She was the underdog of the field, and it's going to hurt a lot to lose that game in classical. Then it's Vaishali with 8, Lei Xingjie with 9, 10.5, Humpy, 11, 11.5. And for the boys, Gukesh is up to second place with back-to-back classical wins. Wei Yi at 6.5, Erigaisi 7.5, 8.5, 11, 11.5. Fabiano Caruana, my man, has picked up 9 points by winning the classical chess. So is Gukesh. That's why they are up there. Fabi's just been more clutch in Armageddon. Crazy. And he's lost less games in classical. That's all I have for you today. Get out of here.